What's up, you guys? Welcome back to another episode of College Kicks. I'm Gio, and as you know from the title of today's episode, there is no there's no guest coach, no guest players. This is more of a updated, trying to see how the league is going. Earlier in the past weeks, I wasn't able to do them, and I had this episode originally planned for Monday, and I did film it. However, the audio of this episode was just it got glitchy in a lot of times, and it was just too bad to try to edit out. It was too many times. That was the issue. It was too many that was just too bad to edit out. So because of that, I had to scrap that out. And there was games on Wednesday that I had mentioned in that prior video about the movement of teams going up and down in the standings, because that's what we're going to talk about today, of the Big West. And there was a lot of um, possibilities and which team could stay in, because it's the last three games, or at that time it was the last three games of the season. So it was a crucial 9 points, and all teams needed these 9 points to either secure a spot in the top six, try to stay in the top six for the time being, or even just fight their way back, get a little closer that they needed. And so all those 9 points were going to be crucial. Wednesday was the day where teams played the first of those three games. So I wanted to talk about that. However, like I mentioned, it just was cutting out. And you could just see here, you look here, these are my notes for those days. I mean, you see, I put them in order of the standings. So you see, Fullerton was on top, Santa Barbara was right below Cal State Bakersfield at third, UC Irvine at fourth, Cal Poly at fifth. They were tied with UC Davis at fifth at that time. This is all prior to Wednesday. Northridge was tied for seventh. They were just missing the postseason at that moment. Tied with them was UC San Diego. It was right below them due to the tie. I'm guessing at the time, since UC San Diego didn't have a win at that time. UC Riverside, that was below, and then Sacramento State right below that. But things are different. So I have these notes now that you see right there. But like I said, we're past that first game. So now what I'm going to talk about now is just the final two games, and how you're gonna notice from what I've just mentioned how the standings were to Monday today, and when you're watching this, it's gonna be the last two games. Standings have changed up quite a bit, and there's still teams that have been affected, and those next 6 points, possible 6 points for these teams, have all changed all around. So we're gonna start getting right into that. As you can see here, looking at the standings, Cal State Fullerton still on top. As you see, that was the same from my notes from what I just showed you from Monday. Cal State Fullerton number one, UC Santa Barbara number two. They stayed at the very top, and they are the only two teams so far as of Wednesday night to have clinched a top six playoff spot. Whether they could lose the next two games, both of them, they could tie the next two games. Doesn't matter. They could lose the next two and still move down a little bit in the standings. They're still going to the playoffs. So we're gonna leave it at that. I'm sorry, we're not gonna leave it at that. We're gonna talk about it, but those two are the ones that are staying in the standings. But you notice, as third, things have changed around. But we're gonna start in order here. Looking at it, like we said, Cal State Fullerton's first on top. Cal State Fullerton currently has the 16 points. They are 5-1-1, 5 wins, one loss, one tie. They have clinched the playoff spot. They were the first one. They got the official clinch, beating Cal State Northridge on Wednesday 3-0 in the Valley. It was a big time win. It was the 100th win for head coach George Kuntz, who's been with the Titans for a long, long time. We mentioned that in the broadcast. If you guys want to look back and watch the game, we talked about it. But focus on here, just a little scenario and changing depending on how they do uh, throughout the last two games, whether they stay in first or they drop down a little bit. One more win does secure them top four, which gives them either third or fourth, would give them a home field advantage, meaning they would host a game in Cal State Fullerton against any other team in the first round. If they somehow, well, I'm sorry, after that, after they get their second win, if they were to get their second win, they have the possibility of a first round bye, also depending on how third and fourth do. So no matter what happens between third and fourth place, if Cal State Fullerton wins the next game and in the final game of the season they end up tying, gives them top two no matter what. That means they could have the possibility of dropping to two if UC Santa Barbara ends up winning the next two. Now, the only way Cal State Fullerton is able to keep that number one spot in the Big West, win the regular season, is by having to finish off winning the next two games. By that time, even if UC Santa Barbara is to win their next two games as well, it would not affect the standings because they're already set as we see them how they are right now. So that would be it. Some notable wins from Cal State Fullerton so far in their season: a 2-0 win against Cal Poly, 5-2 win against Cal State Bakersfield, 3-0 win against Northridge. Now, the reason why that was notable is because one, not only did that clinch them in the playoffs, it was the 100th win, like I mentioned, but also it was so important, not just to them, but to Cal State Northridge, and that Northridge were needing the win, or at least to get a tie 1 point if they were able to scrape anything to still be in contention of the playoffs. Now, does not mean that Northridge is out, but it does make it extremely difficult for them. And Fullerton had to just play like it was another game, which they did, and they got the job done. So that's why it's a notable win for them. The one loss is to UC Santa Barbara, and as of right now, it's just really due to the points that UC Santa Barbara is just one below. That's why I say if Cal State Fullerton was to tie their last game, that kind of evens them out a bit, and that'll allow, because of the tiebreaker being the win for Santa Barbara in their favor, that would put them right above over it. So, Fullerton, they really just need to continue playing to the top level and get those two extra wins that are coming up on Saturday, and then the following Saturday, November 1st, being the last game. And then the one tie was to UC Irvine 1-1 right here. Now we're just gonna take a look at the remaining end of their schedule here. Like I said, against CSUN, they won 3-0. The importance of that game was more important than really the opponent, or well, the them facing CSUN was the importance of it too. But looking at the standings, it might not look as important as it really was. But looking at the last two games, they're hosting UC Davis. That is their last home game of the season against the Aggies. And then their final game, like you said, November 1st, is going to be down south in UC San Diego. That'll be the last game of the season. And whether or not they'll be crowned Big West regular season champions right there. But also, that is also a very important game for UC San Diego and possibly making it into the top six of the postseason. So now moving on to UC Santa Barbara, like we said, they're 1 point behind at 15 points. They have 4 wins, 0 losses, which is very impressive, especially in this tough league. 0 losses is hard to do. As you see, there's only 2 teams that has that. UC Santa Barbara being one of them, and third place UC Irvine, both having no losses. Very impressive on it. But back to UC Santa Barbara, they had 3 ties, and that's essentially what's keeping them below Cal State Fullerton, because UC Santa Barbara, one of those ties could have been a big win, and that would have given them 2 more points and put them right above Cal State Fullerton, especially having that tiebreaker in advantage for them. But talking about Cal State Fullerton again, talking about UC Santa Barbara again, they clinched this season 0 losses, and having 0 losses and being second place is kind of crazy, because you would think with 0 losses that means you're in first place, but these point systems and these wins, these big time wins where you end up getting ties, those lack of points ends up coming back to get you just a little bit. But as of right now, they still have the first round bye, just like Cal State Fullerton, if that's how it ends up standing at the end. As of right now, they're the second team, like you said, to clinch the playoff spot. Another win does also secure them top 4. Again, could be third or fourth, and they'll host a game in the first round, or they get the bye, staying at 1 or 2. 2 wins and a tie, again, much like Cal State Fullerton, guarantees them top 2, making it difficult for Irvine or whoever ends up being third place by the end of this Saturday's games. That most likely would just keep UC Santa Barbara right there at 2, and 3 wins would only put them in first place if Cal State Fullerton gets the 2 wins and 1 tie only, or 2 wins and a loss. That would be the only way that really puts them at first. So UC Santa Barbara is really just hoping if San Diego is able to get a win from there, San Diego's even just to get a draw from there to keep it close enough for them. Another side note is that UC Santa Barbara has a blue-green rivalry game with Cal Poly, which means they play each other 2 times this season. They're the only 2 teams in the conference to play each other twice. The difference is that the first game does not count as a conference game. It's considered a non-league game, and it counts for the overall record for both teams, but not league games. But the second one, that one does count for conference games, and that one ends up being a win for UC Santa Barbara, a 1-0 win against Cal Poly right there. That pretty much helps them there in that scenario, and it's kind of what's putting a big part of what's putting Cal Poly in the position that they're in right now. The non-conference game between that blue-green rivalry ended up being a tie. I believe it was a 0-0 tie for them, but like we said, it doesn't affect how things are going on right now. So some notable wins for UC Santa Barbara: the 1-0 win against Cal State Fullerton. That's what's kept them very close as well. It's a big time win. The 1-0 win against Cal Poly, like I just mentioned. Notable ties: 1-1 tie against Cal State Bakersfield. And Cal State Bakersfield was literally just third place prior to Wednesday. So that means that's how close that tie is, giving both sides giving both sides 1 point each, which easily could have been 0 points for one and 3 for the other. So it's a big time close game on that one. So let's just look at the last few games of the season for UC Santa Barbara here. We see Wednesday they just won, or they beat Sacramento State 2-0. Doesn't look like it was too much for them, but Sacramento State being a team that fights really hard, so it probably was a little closer than what the score shows. But the next game, they are hosting UC Irvine. That will be the last game of the season for Santa Barbara. As after that, their final game of the season, hosting UC Irvine will be the last home game of the season up there in Santa Barbara, because the last game of the season will be here in SoCal in the Valley against Cal State Northridge, which again, both of these 2 games are very important for the teams here, Irvine and Northridge, and for Santa Barbara. So it's going to be some big time games right here for them. Now moving on here, we see in third place is UC Irvine with 13 points. They have 3 wins, 0 losses. Like I mentioned, very impressive, and 4 ties. It's kind of crazy. You have more ties than wins, and yet you are third in the league. UC Irvine recently just moved up. They were just tied for. They were actually just at 4th place, right behind Cal State Bakersfield prior to Wednesday. But because of Wednesday's games and the results, they ended up getting pushed up, where Bakersfield did lose and Irvine did get the win. They moved up in positions, so did Cal Poly right there. UC Irvine, looking at it, currently, with the 13 points, a win or a tie secures them in the playoffs in the top 6. So either one really works out for them. 2 wins and a tie, or 3 wins, secures them top 4. So almost no matter what they do, other than depending to what happens to UC Santa Barbara, it's going to be really hard for them to try to just get a bye in that first round. UC Santa Barbara would probably have to lose these last 2 games, or maybe tie one and lose the other. But the chances of that are very slim, and I don't think UC Irvine should be really looking for that. I think they should more be focused on just getting all the points that they can to secure top 3. Now, you heard me say 2 wins and a tie, or 3 wins. Like I was saying, I was focused on the last 3 games. So the overall of this week, of this last 3 games of the season. But really, there's 2 left. So they already got one of those wins. They need one more win and a tie, or just to win out these last 2 games in order to stay in that top 4. Some wins for them: 1-0 win against Cal State Northridge, a 3-0 win against Sacramento State, and a 2-1 win against UC Davis. Some of the ties: it's a 1-1 tie against UC San Diego, a 1-1 tie against Cal Poly, a 2-2 tie against Cal State Bakersfield, and 1-1 against Cal State Fullerton, which is big time because you're able to get some points out of the number one team in the conference. They do not have any losses, like we're saying, so that's pretty impressive in that aspect. Now we're just gonna look at the remaining games of their schedule, like you see right here. On Wednesday, they got the win against UC Davis 2-1, like we just mentioned. Now looking at the remaining of the schedule, you see right here on Wednesday, they got the win against UC Davis 2-1. The remaining schedule, they're at UC Santa Barbara on Saturday. That'll be Irvine's last away game. And then their last game of the season is at home, going against I would consider crosstown rivalries. They're not very close. They are a good distance away, but that's probably the closest team to them. Irvine will be hosting UC Riverside on November 1st, that Saturday. And I think it's going to be a really good game. Maybe Riverside could, depending on how their situation is going to go in the season, can just ruin the standings for Irvine or and kind of help themselves. Or let's see if Irvine just establish themselves the dominance and gets that going in that game. Now moving on to tied for fourth place, currently holding that leader of fourth place is Cal Poly. You see them with the 11 points. They have 3 wins, 2 ties, 2 losses. I'm sorry. They have 3 wins, 2 losses, 2 ties, the correct way to read that. And you notice their overall record is 6-5-5, 6 wins, 5 losses, 5 ties. Like I mentioned when I was trying to do the video prior, when they were standing, they had 2 wins, 2 ties, 2 losses. Oh, I'm sorry, once again, saying it correctly, 2 wins, 2 losses, 2 ties. And their overall record was 5 wins, 5 losses, 5 ties. That was one thing that I found very interesting, just pretty cool that they were balanced out about at .500 in that time. So I thought it was pretty cool and pretty interesting. But of course, it had, no matter what the result was, one of those 2s was going to change into a 3. And so be it, it became a win for them. As you see them with 11 points right there. Now looking at the scenario, they moved up to 4th because they were tied at 5th. So they moved up with the win. They still are tied, but they're still in the leader of the tie right there. One more win does secure them in the playoffs. Again, top 6. That's all they need is a win, really, because a tie does make it dangerous. And Cal Poly's in a scenario where they're in that edge reach for a lot of teams that are either trying to get into the playoffs, but like UC San Diego and Cal State Northridge, where they're hoping Cal Poly loses the next 2 games. But they're very close, and also in the movement between Bakersfield and UC Davis. So Cal Poly is really just a lot of things that what they can control and a lot of what they can't control throughout the other games. So Cal Poly really needs the last 2 wins to secure top 4. That's the best way to put it. How they're standing right now is essentially how you would see if they win out in the last 2 games. That's the best way to put it. Now, if Cal Poly is to lose or tie to Cal State Northridge, they would need a loss for UC Davis and UC San Diego in order to secure that playoff spot. Now, this is where it gets a little interesting because of the scheduling. Cal Poly and Cal State Northridge play on Sunday at 3 p.m. It's a doubleheader. Both teams from the Valley of Northridge are traveling up north. So the women's are playing at 12 while the men ends up playing at 3. So that game is on Sunday. The rest of the league games are on Saturday. So Cal Poly, seeing their situation, their scenario, they're going to see how UC Davis does and UC San Diego do the day before. Now, they might not be as focused on it, but I'm almost sure they're going to just be checking the scores, watching those games, seeing what's going on, whether it's the players or the coaches or both, and how that's going on. Now, they have the losses. If both of those teams end up getting a loss, Cal Poly pretty much knows that they have secured a spot in the postseason. Now, if one of those teams gets a tie or even a win, then Cal Poly knows they need to at minimum get a tie just to still keep ahead of them, or they need that win against Cal State Northridge, which again will be difficult because Northridge specifically needs this one against Cal Poly. Now, some wins that Cal Poly has. a 2-1 win against UC Davis, 4-0 against UC San Diego, and then just recently the third win of the season. Uh, their ties 1-1 to Sacramento State, 1-1 to UC Irvine. Their losses are 0-2 to Cal State Fullerton and 0-1 to UC Santa Barbara. So they did take losses to the number 1 and number 2 team in the conference. Right here, we're just going to take a look at the remaining games. Like we said, they just won their third game, and it was to UC Riverside. Right there, 1-0 win. So that was the third one. But the remaining games, they are hosting Cal State Northridge. Like I mentioned, the game's going to be at 3 p.m. in San Luis Obispo. That'll be their final home game of the season. Then after that, they're traveling down to Cal State Bakersfield to play their last game of the season, again on November 1st, where I believe all games should be ending for the conference, for the league, right there. So some big time important games for them, and they're really in the mix for who in the middle of the table and who can make it out of the top 6 and who go find their spot and settle in, get ready for the postseason, right there. So now moving on to the next team that is tied with Cal Poly with 11 points in the same record of 3 wins, 2 losses, 2 ties. It is Cal State Bakersfield. And like I mentioned, prior to Wednesday, they were just in third place right there. They had themselves looking a little nice. They did need to get the win to kind of secure themselves, not only just in the postseason, but in have a better chance of staying in the top 4 in that situation where they would have had just to need 2 wins out of the last 3. But they got a loss here, so they could still do it. It's just a really smaller chance to it, and we're going to be talking about that right now. So you see, you're still looking at the records right there. Cal State Bakersfield, they need one more win to secure the top 6, like we're saying, one more win to just be in the postseason. 2 wins, final 2 wins, they will almost likely just secure themselves in the top 4, but they do need the 2 wins, because if they're to end with a tie and a win, that gives them a really, really tight, narrow situation where they might be moving up or down with UC Davis, depending on how UC Davis does, and very closely how UC San Diego does. So it's very important that Bakersfield, for them to keep themselves in the middle of the season, try to get a home game in that first round, in the middle of the conference, you get that one, you get both wins right there. You end that the season in the 2 wins and not get a tie, especially not get a loss. That would hurt you so much in those losses. So notable wins: a 1-0 win against Cal State Northridge, notable tie 2-2 against UC Irvine, and 1-1 against UC Santa Barbara. Big time points right there that would drop, but they did compete and they were able to get something out of the number 2 and now number 3 team and in the conference. The losses, they had a 2-5 loss against Cal State Fullerton. That was big time, and that did not look good at all. But you're able to bounce back, and they were able to bounce back. I'm saying they weren't able to bounce back very much from it. And then after that, they just got a 1-2 loss to UC San Diego. And that's what very much hurt them. And that's why I say it's very important, depending on how UC San Diego does, because that's why Cal State Bakersfield would need those next 2 wins, because San Diego will be on their heels if they drop the ball. Something to just really note is that if both Cal Poly and Bakersfield tie or lose a game this Saturday, they will play each other. They will face each other on November 1st, the final game of the season, which could possibly be their tiebreaker. Now, it could result in a tie, which, again, like how the standings are right now, that will put Cal Poly right above them. But preferably, if either team is able to get the win, that would flip the standings. So in the scenario, Cal State Bakersfield win, they tie or lose on Saturday, the last game of the season, they get that win, that puts them above Cal Poly if they end up in the same results of that season. So we're looking at it here, just again, the last games that they have remaining for Cal State Bakersfield. We see they're on a 2 game losing streak here again from Cal State Fullerton and then UC San Diego right there. The last games they are going to UC Riverside to play their last away game um, in Riverside, and then their final game of the season, which will also be their final game at home for the season, will be hosting Cal Poly. And like I said, the importance of that game really just depends on how Saturday, October 25th, those results of those games end up coming out, and of Sunday for when Cal Poly is playing Cal State Northridge in that scenario. Getting that last spot into the postseason is UC Davis. Now we see they are tied with UC San Diego, but since only 6 could get in, right now UC Davis is put above them with the advantage right there. So they're in that 6th spot. We see they have 2 wins, 3 losses, 2 draws, and right now that is what's giving them the 8 points and currently being above UC San Diego, because if you notice, UC San Diego only gets 1 win, and we just saw they got that win from Cal State Bakersfield. So UC San Diego, we'll talk about them and how they've been able just to stick around in the time being. So just looking at what kind of their scenario is and what they need in the last 3 games, like I was mentioning, they needed 2 wins to secure themselves into the postseason. Of that Wednesday game, they did take the loss to UC Irvine. So that means this next 2 games are a must win. Again, 1 win, 1 draw will put them in a very tight scenario. And it depends on how the other teams do and how teams end up get moving around with these ties because of those single points. So just to be the safest, they need those 2 wins, the remaining 2 games. The reason why out of those 3 they needed only 2 wins and not 2 wins in a tie or something like that to get in the postseason is because they have already played against Cal State Northridge and UC San Diego, in which Davis was able to get a win against Northridge, meaning they had the tiebreaker of it, and then they got a tie against UC San Diego, which in the standings already puts UC Davis above them, so they wouldn't have to worry about it. If it came to continuing being tied in points with UC San Diego, was just like we saw right below them. But because of getting that loss on Wednesday to Irvine, which they needed to get a win to be a little more calm about it, they really need to get these next 2 wins. Notable wins: the 1-0 against Cal State Northridge, because it's coming up big time now towards the end of the season. 3-2 win against UC Riverside, close game, very important game, and it ended up again being big, coming up with 3 points now. Ties, they have 1-1 against UC San Diego, which is also being big. 0-0 against UC Santa Barbara, which also scrapping out and getting 1 point from the number 2 team in the country, is coming in clutch to just saving themselves at the 6th spot. But pointing out their loss, they do have the 1-2 loss to Cal Poly, a 1-2 loss to Cal State Bakersfield, and 1-2 to UC Irvine. So it seems to be they just losing these games by 1 goal, where they could end up getting another point out of it and taking out points from Cal Poly that's above them, Cal State Bakersfield that's above them, and UC Irvine that was also above them. So that would have changed a lot, but just by 1 goal, and that's where you lose your points right there. So we're just gonna look at the remaining schedule like we done for the rest of them. You see, they got that one against Riverside, but then they end up getting that loss at Irvine, that 1-2. Next, they'll be going away to Fullerton, where they'll play their final away game of the season on Saturday. Cal State Fullerton will be hosting them, and that's gonna be a big time game. Let's see if they could get even a tie out of this first place team. And that'll change a lot for Cal State Fullerton for trying to stay in first place. So again, still a very important game. And the final game of the season, they'll be hosting their NorCal rivals, Sacramento State, right there. I don't know if they will call it the Bay rivalry or something like that, but the rivalry are just up there in that area. I think they're about 40 minutes away from each other, give or take. That'll also be a big win for Davis right there. So let's see how they do and how their scenario ends up at the end of the season. They'll still need to just play at the best level. All right, now we're looking at the teams that are just outside of the postseason looking in. Obviously, it's very close still. Right below is UC San Diego holding into that last spot. They're tied in points, so they're right there at the cusp of getting over. Cal State Northridge is 3 points behind, but because there's 2 games left, a lot of things could happen, especially with losses being a big part of these things. But these are now teams that are just on the outside looking in at it. So the first one we're going to, obviously right there in the line, right below UC Davis, is UC San Diego with the 8 points. You see they have their first win of the season. As you see, their overall record is 1 win, 7 losses, 7 ties. 1 win in the season. That's crazy to think that they got it this late in their season, and yet it's still keeping them in the possibility of going into the postseason. So that's just really just winning and where it matters, but also it tells you that you need to, one, get a lot of ties. You see those 5 ties in conference, but also try to get a win early on, because you never know when it could save you or even keep you in a lifeline later on in that season. Right there. So we see in conference, they're actually 1 win, 1 loss, and 5 ties looking at it so far. Let's just talk about them. Like I said, they're tied. Uh, they got their first one of the season being Cal State Bakersfield, which is a great one. Wasn't just one of their bottom outside of the postseason teams. Uh, their ties kept them in because even prior to Wednesday, they were 0, 1, and 5, and they were still tied with Cal State Northridge and possibility of getting into the postseason. Now, UC San Diego's season and going into the postseason depends on 2 factors: themselves winning the next 2 games, winning out, and in that scenario, UC Davis has to lose or tie 1 game. If that is to happen, UC San Diego finds themselves in 6th place and making it into the postseason. Let me say that again. They have to win out the next 2 games, and they need Davis to lose or tie one of those games. They probably prefer UC Davis to lose and tie these last 2 games. Now, if UC San Diego is to lose or tie a game that they need to win, or obviously all these are need to win, so they're to lose or tie one of these games, they would need UC Davis to lose a game, guaranteed lose a game, and have Cal State Northridge lose or tie in order to cushion themselves and leaving Northridge right behind them. Now, in that situation, that's 1 loss or 1 tie means they also have to get 1 win in those scenarios. You need to get the 1 win, have a loss or tie. That's if that happens this Saturday in the final game, they would need that win. And then you have UC Davis needing to lose, guaranteed no tie and win. It needs to be a loss and a tie in order to go right above them. And Northridge is just to have that cushion above them. Some of the wins about the only win for them is the 2-1 win against Cal State Bakersfield. Their 1 loss in this conference is the 0-4 to Cal Poly. And then their ties are 1-1 to UC Irvine, 1-1 to UC Davis, 2-2 to UC Riverside, 1-1 to Santa Barbara, and 0-0 to Cal State Northridge. So they're able to scrap out points for the number 3 in the country in the conference right now. The number 6 right now that's right above them, Riverside, who's just below them. Number 2 in the conference, Santa Barbara, UC Santa Barbara, and the team that's just right below them and right at their heels is 0-0 against Cal State Northridge. It was 1-1 against Santa Barbara and a 2-2 against Riverside. Same. Let's take a quick look at the last games. They're going to be at Sacramento on Saturday, October 25th at 3 p.m. game. And then the following Saturday, they're going to be facing the number 1 team in the conference. They're going to be hosting their senior night for UC San Diego down there against Cal State Fullerton. And we talked about that in the Fullerton little section that we had right there. So again, important games. Sacramento State being the bottom of the table, that should be something UC San Diego should look to try to get their 2nd win of the season right there. Now we're closing down to the bottom 3, the last 3 of the standings here. we're getting towards the end. Cal State Northridge right here at the valley, in the valley of Los Angeles, in the San Fernando Valley, this area. They have 5 points. They have one win, which they got early in the season against Riverside, a 1-0 win. And they have four losses and two draws. And those two draws are what's, again, keeping them on a thread to try to fight for that sixth place spot into the postseason right there. You see their overall record at 6 wins, 5 losses, 5 ties. So their non-conference games were really good and a lot better. They only had one lost non-conference game, and it's their final non-conference game against Grand Canyon University. But just looking at the situation about this on this scenario, they dropped down a spot in prior to Wednesdays in their standings. Prior to that, they were just right there at the very edge, at the cusp. Them and UC San Diego did switch out at the results on Wednesday with the loss to Cal State Fullerton, the 3-0 loss. It's very tough because prior to Wednesday's games and on Monday this video hype came out, I would have talked about out of those three games, they need at least to tie one and to win two in order to find themselves around that fourth, fifth, even sixth for sure area, depending on how the other game's gone. And one of those wins would have had to came from Cal Poly because that would have been the tiebreaker between the two if they had the same number, if they tied in points. However, that scenario does not come to play anymore due to the loss to Fullerton. Now they need to win out the next two games. They need both those two wins, those 6 points, in order to get them to 11 points in that situation. And they would need UC Davis and UC San Diego to just get two ties or two losses, just not a win for either one of them. For both of them, both having 8 points, that's really hurting them. Having that one game, well, not one game, but those 3 points above them. They really need UC Davis and UC San Diego to lose both games or to tie one and lose one, but do not get a win at all in that. Looking at the sole win, like I mentioned, it was 1-0 to UC Riverside, a goal late in the second half by Kike Pineda. Their ties 2-2 against Sacramento State, in which Northridge players, they will tell you it was very disappointing because they were leading 2-0. Second half, Sac State adjust, changed their formation, changed a few tactics. They were able to tie the game. The next tie game was 0-0 to UC San Diego. Again, a big time game, which Northridge felt like they should have gotten 3 points out of instead of one. The losses 0-1 to Cal State Bakersfield, a very tough, gritty, physical game. 0-1 to UC Davis, 0-1 to UC Irvine, and then 0-3 to Cal State Fullerton. That one's hurting the most so far at where they're at in the season. We're just going to take a quick look at the last two games here. They're going to be, like I mentioned earlier, they're going to be at Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, 3 p.m. game right there on Saturday. Then their final game, they're hosting the last home game of the season, the last game of their season, depending on how things go on. But still the last game of the regular season in the Valley, the San Fernando Valley in Northridge. They're hosting UC Santa Barbara. So it's going to be a great game. It's going to be really fun to call for myself, but I think you guys are going to have a good time just watching this game right here. Next up is UC Riverside. Now, UC Riverside has 4 points. That does not mean they're completely out of it. Now, it does make the mountain even steeper. It makes the slope even harder. It's a higher mountain to climb up for UC Riverside, but they have the possibility of walking out with 10 points if they get the next two wins right there. They currently have 4 with 1 win, 5 losses, 1 draw. And their scenario is just looking a little tough here. And really, the scenario is they need 2 wins, and UC Davis and UC San Diego to lose and tie in these last 2 games, as well as Northridge to only get 1 win, because that 1 win for Northridge will put them at 8. The 2 wins for Riverside will put them at 10. And having Davis and San Diego only tie 1, getting 1 point would put them at 9. That would put it right above, and most likely that would pass. That would put UC Riverside getting that sixth spot right there, and kicking out UC Davis and UC San Diego out of the postseason. Now, if UC Riverside gets a loss or a tie on Saturday, or UC Davis and UC San Diego get a win on Saturday, then the postseason hopes for UC Riverside are over. UC Riverside cannot get a loss or a tie. Any one of those two results, that's it. Season's over. Whether it's, I say on Saturday just because like that would automatically put it. Obviously, November 1st, that would just, it's last game anyways. So that was just in the scenario. But for Saturday, it will be that result will really just determine how that final game, the importance of it, and how the other teams do. Some wins of their only win, I'm sorry, not some wins. Their only win was 3-0 to Sacramento State. The loss was 1-0 to Cal State Northridge. Or I say 0-1 to Cal State Northridge, 0-3 to UC Santa Barbara, 1-2 to Cal State Fullerton, 2-3 to UC Davis, 0-1 to Cal Poly, and their sole tie is 2-2 to UC San Diego. So they're really behind, and they just don't have any tiebreakers that are in their favor. Now, their final games of the season, we see right here, they're off a 3-game losing streak after getting their win against Sacramento State. Pretty tough having Cal State Fullerton to play them right there. But the last games of the season, on Saturday the 25th, they are hosting Cal State Bakersfield and with what will be UC Riverside's last home game of the season. It is their senior night. And then right after that, we said they're going against their closest rival in proximity against UC Irvine. That would be in Irvine. Now, folks, the last team in the standings in 10th place is Sacramento State. As you can see, they're in 10th place with 2 points, 0 wins in the conference. They do have 1 win overall in their overall record. It was a 2-1 win against the University of Pacific in Stockton. It is their sole win right now, as they are 1 win, 11 losses, and 4 draws overall. But in the conference, they are 0 wins, 5 losses, and 2 draws. That's where they get their 2 points from. Surprisingly enough, mathematically, their chances for the postseason is not over. Again, it is a lot of what they can control, but it is not over because there are 6 points available. If they win those next 2, get their 2 wins of the conference. That ties them at 8, and it'd be extremely difficult to be put over UC Davis and UC San Diego. And honestly, how the standings are, there's a very good chance even then UC Davis will still get that last spot over Sacramento State. But for the sake of it, let's just say if they're able to get those 2 wins, because looking at it, they would need to win the last 2 games, and they would need everyone from UC Davis all the way to UC Riverside to lose both games. Or Cal State Northridge and UC Riverside are able to get 2 ties. That'll still help out Sac State if they're able to get the 2 wins. But for sure, they would need Davis and San Diego to get 2 losses. And like I said, it would be really tough to see if Sacramento State would be able to make it over UC Davis in that 6th spot, the 6th seed into the postseason, just because I think UC Davis has it right above. But this is where it gets a little interesting. This is why I said it's tough. It's going to be hard. But this is the chance of it. Because the tiebreaker, Sacramento State has not played UC Davis. So that tiebreaker is still open in the possibility. But right before we get into that, losses, Sacramento State obviously doesn't have a win. So the losses are 0-1 to Cal State Bakersfield, 1-2 to Cal State Fullerton, 0-3 to UC Riverside, 0-3 to UC Irvine, 0-2 to Santa Barbara, and their ties are 2-2 to Cal State Northridge and 1-1 to Cal Poly. So props to them to get a 1 point out of Cal Poly. Their only uh, green team to be in the conference with them. And see now I'm just remembering why I said there's a slight possibility in the wins of it for them to make it the sixth. And yes, it'll still be hard, but if somehow they're able to pull it off, they play the two teams that they need to get the losses. So Sacramento State has the opportunity to have some control of their destiny and possibly making that sixth seed by giving a loss to the two teams that they need to get two losses. They're going to host UC San Diego, their senior night for Sacramento. The complete furthest teams from each other of this conference. Far North Cal up there in Sacramento. And they're having San Diego, UC San Diego, fly up from far down in SoCal all the way up to the state capital to face off in that game, the senior night for Sacramento. And if Sacramento is able to come off with a win there, that gives them some chance, giving the Tridents a loss. And then right after that, like we mentioned earlier with UC Davis, Sacramento State is going to be at UC Davis for their 40-minute rivalry, the closest in proximity of rivalry right there. And again, they have the opportunity of giving UC Davis the second loss if Davis is to lose on Saturday, October 25th. So it's going to be very interesting, very, very crazy to see. Of course, if UC San Diego does tie with Sacramento State on October 25th, then the chances of Sacramento State making the postseason are over. That tie alone would put UC San Diego right above them. Even in the scenario, if Sacramento State's able to beat UC San Diego, but ends up getting the tie against UC Davis, then UC Davis is put in. So again, no ties, no losses, all wins right there. So yeah, guys, it was a lot. Just looking at it, just recording this edit, it was a lot, but it's kind of what the updates have been. Like I said, I had planned this for prior, just couldn't get to it because that audio was not good at all. So I wanted to make sure, hopefully, this one was better. And let's see how the last two games go, and it's gonna be crazy. But I'm excited to see how it goes and who we're gonna be talking about making that postseason. But thanks again for watching. This is College Kicks. I'm Gio. See you guys next time.